Hi, everybody. I am Matt Selecki. I'm the VP of Engineering at JibJab. And today I want to talk about earning trust and building confident teams. So, a little bit about my perspective. I started out as a leader in several video gaming teams and communities, and currently sit as one of the younger engineering leaders with very senior, high caliber team members with a lot of tenure. So, there is extra trust building I need to typically endure as I join teams as one of the younger members from time to time. And how I've been brought into leadership positions has been pretty diverse, whether through a consulting or a temporary role, as an outside hire brought in, or an internal promotion. So I've experienced entering a leadership role in multiple different ways as well. And I know you've all read the books, you've all seen the talks, you've all been to the summits. So I'm hopeful that I can provide maybe a fresh new perspective on being a leader, a newer leader in the space that maybe you haven't heard before, that's not in the books, in the summits that you've seen in the past. So first, I want to start off with some tips and tricks I learned along the way. And so some general advice is I wouldn't waste time with one-on-ones. At the end of the day, you're coworkers, and you really shouldn't be involved in people's personal lives, personal matters. Deadlines are there for a reason. So there's really not much room for flexibility there. Deadlines are the deadlines. We have to get stuff done. No questions asked. Uh, I I've seen people evaluate developers purely quantitatively. Pull request frequency, code line count, points per week, all great measuring sticks for your fellow engineers. Reprimand publicly and make an example when something isn't done quite to your standards. People need to be made an example out of. Praise is overrated. It's their job to do these things. Why are we praising for people doing their jobs? And failure shouldn't be accepted. We must demand success at all times. And really, at the end of the day, if you need something done right, you got to just do it yourself. Now, I could see you all through my camera here. All of you are rolling your eyes, wondering why would this guy say things like this? And obviously, this all sounds like terrible advice, and it is, as you have all come to the conclusion of. But it may sound obvious when you see these things in a list like this and you read them one by one, and you think to yourself, how can anyone even have principles like this? But I've seen it in the past. I still see it today. And there's probably a chance we're all fractionally guilty at some minor level of doing maybe part of some of these things. So when I look at this list, I also think, am I guilty of doing any of these things? Inadvertently, of course, but maybe subconsciously. And now I want to kind of lead into the early days of my professional career, which weren't too long ago, but how did I get inspired to be the type of leader that I've become today? And I kind of want to go back to a story at a previous company of mine where I was working on a cross-team project with someone, an acquaintance of mine who later became a friend, and we were really struggling to come to a solution over, I don't even remember the instant messenger we were using at the time. It wasn't Slack at the time. And then I had walked over to their desk across the office, and a problem-solving session quickly turned into a venting session where I was expressing my frustrations with the stack we were using, the frameworks we were using, how I felt like I was being pigeonholed and held back. And then shortly thereafter, their team lead, who was in the office adjacent to the desk we were communicating at, came out and said, hey, can you step in my office really quickly? And, I was a little nervous. I thought I might have ruffled some feathers inadvertently and I might be in a little bit of heat, a little bit of trouble. But when I had been called into the office, he just sat down, poured a glass of whiskey, pushed it across the desk, offered it to me, poured himself one, and just said, let's talk. What's on your mind? And really, that just completely caught me off guard. Somebody who just wanted to listen to me. I didn't have to go ask to be listened to. He wanted to listen. And we sat in that room for 2-3 hours on a Friday night, and he listened to everything I had told him. He told me the reasons we were doing things, provided me the context, really just heard me out, listened to me, offered solutions, offered suggestions, explanations, everything I needed to hear. And I walked away from that thinking, I don't even care what this team works on. I want to be on that team because I want to work for him. And I always think back to that when I think about the leader my team needs me to be. I want to be that person for them. So I always think back to this story of how I first was getting exposure and visibility into what a good leader is, who people want to rally behind and people want to work for. So we can go into some general kind of advice here, what to start with, what to keep doing, and how to end. And it really all starts with a good foundation, effective onboarding. So I found that effective, non-pressured onboarding, so not throwing people in to start working on bugs, start working on tickets. And actually, a suggestion I heard from a previous CTO Connection Summit was the concept of an onboarding journey. And I've taken that concept and gamified it further and brought it further, where you send somebody new on the path of a core user, and you ask them to discover and answer questions along the way. Some of those questions involve asking teammates and team members on different teams and different divisions within the company. Sometimes your teammates, sometimes people who you will be working with indirectly in the future. And often it is, you log in and you authenticate and you do this. What backend services were used? What classes were used? Where is this message in the queue? How is the queue read? What type of Lambda is pulling messages out of the queue? Where's the data stored in the database? What is the data model? What's the relationship? So these kinds of questions are being answered all throughout the onboarding journey. And it really helps set the stage for them to start going into a normal workflow with confidence, now knowing that they've met people on the team, they've learned a lot about the systems, and they're ready to start actually contributing by this point. At this point, they're anxious to start contributing. So all the stars are now aligning to have somebody highly effective on the team. And the baseline for establishing this trust is setting that one-on-one cadence. This is where you earn the bi-directional flow of trust. This is where you earn their trust, and this is where they earn your trust. So, trust is not given; it is earned at the end of the day. So you need to find an environment to build and foster and grow this trust. And a one-on-one environment is the great environment to do that within. And really just make sure they have a voice on the existing team. They're new. They want to be heard. They have great ideas. They have ideas that likely contradict yours and your team's. Hear them out. And really, there's a quote I like to adhere to is, we hire smart people to tell us what to do. We don't want to tell smart people what to do. So they join us. They join our team to help us get better, not so we can manipulate them into doing things the way we always want to do it. Have them influence us also. Now, what to continue doing? You've established a good baseline. What do you want to do next? So evaluate fairly, invest in your team, empower your team, and grow your team. And I always tell everyone, pull request feedback is just as valuable as the pull request itself. And I look at this in the form of effective comments. So how many of the comments you leave on a pull request actually get acted on or discussed? Those comments are just as effective for spreading knowledge, for getting good discussions going, and making the code quality of the product better. So pull request feedback, just as valuable as the pull request itself. Some engineers feel that they're being judged strictly on lines of code or the amount of pull requests or the points done, and that can't be your only measuring stick. There are so many other dimensions to evaluate a talented engineer. Code quality, with reasonable velocity. So, your gut will tell you what a reasonable velocity is, and you also are all experienced engineers and engineering leaders, and you could look at some code quality or have somebody you trust tell you if the code quality is trending in the right direction. Code quality is very important. And then, do your team members, do you know their career goals? Are you helping them get there? Because if you're not going to help them get there and your company is not going to help them get there, they're going to find a company that will, or they're going to do it on their own. So if you can foster an environment where you're helping all of your team members meet their career goals, help them get there, they're going to want to stick around, because not only are they helping the company move forward, they're helping themselves move forward. And this will happen every now and then. People will veer off the path. People go through ebbs and flows. They're highly productive one week, and maybe the next week not nearly as productive. I tend to look at the macro trends, right? They may be going up and down, but are they trending upward, or are they trending downward? And have those difficult discussions early if you're seeing the trends in the wrong direction. And go to bat for your team. Show your team that you're there for them, that you support them, and you're going to back their decisions at the highest level, at the lowest level, every level in between. Show them that you're there to support them. And another quote I like to adhere by for, establishing a good process is, every 10th decision should come to me, and every 100th decision would get overridden. So this gives your team a sense of empowerment that they should know what they need to do, when they need to do it, how you think, why you think that way, have all the context necessary to not come to you with every single decision. They can make decisions for themselves, and very rarely do I disagree with the decisions that they make. Another kind of scenario I always reflect back on, and the scenario I always want to be in is the one on the right. Is the one, the one on the right. Apologies. And it's where the CFO asks the CEO, and I've seen this discussed internally at the executive level. What happens if we invest in developing people and then they leave us? And then the smart CEO would say, what happens if we don't and they stay? I want to be in an environment where we are investing in people. People's time with your company is always finite. They will never be there forever. But if we can elevate one another, we also elevate the company as a result. So I always choose to invest, empower, and grow people wherever I am. And then ultimately, you have to part ways at some point. It always happens. It's inevitable. And much like you come and go, so must your teammates. Some of the best will also end their terms with you, hopefully on good terms. Be proud and happy of the ones that you have grown and how they have progressed. And the fact that they want to level up their career, they are ambitious. This is just like you. You had to leave several companies to get to where you are today. And now someone that you have grown wants to follow the path that you've taken. And this should be a very proud and happy moment, not a sad and unfortunate moment. Of course, it's bittersweet, but you should be happy for them at the end of the day. Remember, it's a small world. You will likely work again, especially if you're in a smaller, tighter knit tech community. And you want to be the first person someone calls when they're looking for a new opportunity. And think about who's the first person you would call when you're looking for a new opportunity. Why? Be that person. So some real life examples, those are all the textbook stuff, but some real examples I've been through in the past couple years, actually past 5 years, even longer now, and wanted to just share some anecdotal evidence with you all. And one is a startup I was a part of, and there was a big organizational restructure with some limited runway. And so company X, we'll call it, was a startup around 15 employees. 1 year in, the CEO had stepped down and a new CEO filled in, and that led to engineering reorganization across the board, leadership changes everywhere. As a result of that, thankfully, I was promoted to a director, and there were several other senior engineers in contention for this promotion as well. And when I did get promoted, I was then revealed the information that we only have about 6 months of runway left, and we need to make some sort of major pivot to start being able to stand up for ourselves and generate a revenue stream to self-sustain. So we have a lot going on here, a lot of dynamics. This turned into some of the team felt blindsided by the new upper leadership, and it just really developed this unease, and this trust deteriorated, and it felt like this wall got put up in between the engineering team and those who had been there since the beginning, and the new leadership team who were new and potentially doing some things that the engineering team did not like, on top of all the leadership reorganization changes. So there was this divide in the middle, and I viewed it as a challenge to break that wall down and restore the communication, because at this time, there was a couple of days where not a lot of work got done. There was feelings of betrayal. There was feelings of lost trust. And I'm sure a lot of the engineering team felt like they needed to think about moving on to somewhere else, some other opportunity. So how I felt I needed to win everybody was doing a lot of extra team building, really proving to everybody I wanted to be part of the team. I wanted to represent them, and I wanted to be, one of the crew, right? So this required a lot of extra team building inside and outside of work. So we stopped working earlier on Fridays and started doing some team building things, some barbecues, hanging out after work. I tried to attend every single after work extracurricular activity, whether it was a happy hour, a birthday, you name it. I made it a point to be there, and I made it a priority in my life to be there. I really wanted to go out of my way to prove I was part of the team. And as that started happening, I felt the trust being restored with me and that team. Even though I was indirectly a part of this wall being built, sometimes that's just how things go, and I had to work extra hard to restore that trust. I also was very upfront and direct about my promotion over the others, and talked with each one of them one-on-one, stating that, I'm going to do my best to represent you, and we want to grow the company so there's more leadership opportunities that you all can be a part of. So after I was able to earn that trust, I was able to build the bridge between upper management and the team. And because of that, we were able to work so well together. And we rallied, we shipped our major pivot with about 8 weeks to spare, not much left to make the revenue you need. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. The team did disband. We didn't reach the revenue goals we had aspired to reach. But at the end, we all felt very proud, a sense of teamwork, a sense of cohesion, left it all on the field. And I think because of the happy ending, we would all be happy to work together again in the future. And that was really my end goal, was to go out on a good note. So something recently at JibJab, a port from OpenGL to Metal. This was quite a interesting project of ours that didn't quite go as planned. And I'm sure you're all familiar with this picture here, where we have the expected roadmap up top of how long we expected this to take, and then the actual outcome of what happened when we put this plan into action. So instead of this nice handover and the iOS team was going to be able to implement this new great library, it turned out there were just tons of issues with it that were unforeseen by the team. Blank frames, out of sync heads, export frames are missing, videos won't load, threading issues, concurrent queue issues, out of memory leaks, you name it, we had an issue with it. So as you could see, this was not going according to plan, and it quickly led to some demoralization. Multiple months of whack-a-mole. Although it starts out as something we can handle, it got very demoralizing very quickly. So I had to get into a tough decision where I had to make a call. The roadmap was being held up. The morale of the team was almost at its all-time low, and not one team, but multiple teams, and the product managers and the QA, and the extending teams that were 1 degree away from these teams were also feeling the morale hit. So I had to make a call. If we're going to put this project on hold we've been working on for a whole year and call it a loss and take the L, or make some wild last-minute ideas to try to just get some change to happen in the right direction. And I knew I had to go down with the ship. If the ship was going to go down, I had to go down with it. I could not be looking as an outside observer and watch the team fail. I had to fail with them. So this is how I helped to get, without getting in the way, is first and foremost, I was the rubber duck. So you might have all heard of rubber duck debugging. I became the rubber duck. I called them into meetings. I asked them to walk me through hundreds of lines of code, explain to me what they think it was doing, what assumptions were they making, where did they think things could have gotten wrong? And I started asking a lot of questions about the code. I didn't understand it all, but I asked a lot of questions. What would happen if we didn't multi-thread it and we single-threaded it? What would happen if we used concurrent queues instead of serial queues? What would happen if we reused textures instead of creating new ones every render cycle? So started asking these questions and inspiring some sort of thought and new change and approaches from the team. And on the side, I did some experimentations. I was familiar with the code, but I didn't want to be the person that committed a pull request that was the fix. I wanted them to be the fix. So if I did discover anything, I would nudge them towards that solution rather than actually commit it myself. So take the multiple hour long pair programming sessions, be part of the solution. And I learned here, it's good to get into the trenches 1 to 2 times a year. And what ended up happening here is we did figure out how to get this thing fixed due to a lot of the ideas I kind of mentioned before. And I got a lot of praise afterwards from the team where they were saying, hey, I didn't really have, it wasn't so much that I wasn't respected, but it's like they didn't appreciate what I brought to the table, because before then I was viewed as just the guy who made decisions and the guy who set the roadmap and that kind of perspective. And now I was with the team, experiencing their struggles, part of the team, coding, understanding the code. And they said they gained a whole new appreciation for what I brought to the company and brought to the team. And I think because of that, I earned a lot of trust, them knowing that I did have what it took to lead them, and they wanted to be led by someone like me because I was willing to get in there, get my hands dirty, and work alongside with them. And now something we've all dealt with, unfortunately, the past year and a half now, COVID-19. It's affected all of us. It's affected all of us in different ways, depending on where you are around the world. And what I've learned throughout this unfortunate, terrible pandemic that we've all had to go through is people have lives, and we need to value that. And people have struggles that are different all around the world. We have a very diverse team at JibJab, team members in all locations around the globe, and all of them have different problems. Some of them have or had, back at the height of COVID, different hours where they couldn't go out, different vaccine requirements, different times they could go and get a vaccine versus when they couldn't, different age restrictions, all different rules across different regions. I had to learn them and want to learn them. So that way, when I was talking with them on how to help fix their problems, I could be empathetic and be in their shoes and try to figure out how to solve problems from their perspective, not my perspective. So having the flexible hours, being empathetic, wanting to learn about people, and in the one-on-ones, focusing not so much on what we need to do at work, but asking about their friends and family. How are they dealing with the pandemic? What struggles are they having? How can we help you? Because we care about you. We want to help you. We're all going through this together. How can we help one another get through this? And on top of that, having the empathy and keeping that trust connection strong, some team building on the side. And I can't take credit for all of these great ideas. Our amazing HR representative really comes up with a lot of these. So we've done virtual escape rooms, we've done trivia, we now do draw togethers, we've done magic shows, all virtual. And it's just some way, even though it's not as fun as being in person, it's some way to have some camaraderie together. And now to finish up, some real tips and tricks, unlike that misleading slide from before. And I've worked for Mark Cuban in the past, and something I learned from him and something I didn't do well early on enough, and I now certainly do much better, is he writes down the word listen in the corner of his notebook during meetings. Anytime he feels like he wants to interrupt or interject, he just writes the word listen down in the corner. And the older I get, the more experience I get. I learned that people want to be heard. They have great ideas. Even though you might know where they're going, you getting in the way or completing other sentences does not do anyone any good. People want to be heard. They want to be listened to. And I think about that time when I was at my one of my first tech companies where the team leader brought me in and just wanted to listen to me. Listening is such a big tenet of what I try to aspire to get better at every single day. And alongside that, be the person people want to be led by if you didn't have the title. So if you had a flat organization, who would people naturally rally behind and why? Be that person. Encourage fast failure. Encourage fast recovery. If you're not failing, you're not learning. Public praise is way more impactful than you may think. Just one positive comment directly to somebody or in the public channels could really turn somebody's week around. It could be the littlest thing. It could be the biggest thing. You would be so surprised how impactful positivity is in somebody's life, especially in the world we're in today. It's just the littlest amount of praise can really turn someone's life around, their week around, their month around, and you're going to get so much better performance, such a better relationship. Recurring one-on-ones, that's where you earn the bi-directional flow of trust. I can't stress enough how important one-on-ones are. And something I've learned in my professional career and my personal life, I'm a highly logical person, as I'm sure a lot of you are, but people are emotional creatures, and emotional situations and problems sometimes don't have logical solutions. And you need to go into your emotional intelligence bank to figure out how to solve them sometimes. And people problems are much different from technical problems, and they require different approaches to solving them. And that's something I get better at every day in my personal relationships and my professional ones. Create a culture where people want to be their whole selves. People are their best selves when they are their whole selves. If they're a fraction of themselves at work, you're going to get a fraction of what they're capable of. Have empathy. Be able to see people's perspective from their point of view. Have the difficult conversations early. Don't avoid them. And the last, but certainly not least, lead. Don't manage. And thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.